Welcome to today's meeting of the Persons with Disabilities Committee for the County of San Diego. I think we will do the very quick introductions and then take that first item, which is Carolyn's participation. I'm Michelle Krug, chairing this committee. I'm representing Nathan Fletcher's district, District 4. I live in the city of San Diego, Southeast San Diego, and have been involved in trying to create access in many, many different situations, in housing, in immigration processes, et cetera, et cetera. Which way do we want to go?
I'll go next. I am Kate Turpin, and I am the district appointee for Supervisor Joel Anderson. And I represent the disability community, two of them actually, one chronic substance abuse disorder and the other intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Oh, I did forget to say I'm blind. Sorry. Katie, do you want to go next just because we're going like counterclockwise, it seems?
Sure. I'm Katie McKnight. I work for the county in human resources, and I'm here to support the committee in their administrative needs.
Right, and Elaine Pitt-Pitt. I'm also with the Department of Human Resources in the Benefits Division.
I'm Todd Hood, and I'm the liaison for the Committee for Persons with Disabilities.
Randall Shelblom with County Council.
I'm Jeanette Shelton, a committee member representing Terra Lawson, New York District 3.
Carolyn, you want to introduce yourself and then we'll go straight into your item?
Absolutely. My name is Carolyn Smith. I'm the 2014 Veteran of the Year for the 71st District here in East County. I am appointed by Joel Anderson, and I represent the veteran community as veteran advocate.
Okay, and our first item is approving Carolyn's meeting with us virtually.
I think we're short of a quorum for that,
We need
so
one more
we
person.
can continue on. No votes at this point yet.
We'll do it shortly.
Madam Chair, I have a question for you though. If we're
Yes.
only doing a discussion item on the housing ordinance, do we need a form for that?
We do not, yeah, we do not need a form for that. It's informational.
Technically, Chair, you need a quorum to have the meeting at all.
No, that's not accurate. I have actually checked this directly with Claudia. This is an information meeting if we don't have a quorum. But at this point,
Well, perhaps because it's on the agenda, we do need a quorum.
no, we don't.
We don't.
So we can start with that, or we can, we'll have to wait for the minutes as well.
Who are the members that are missing? Can we do a roll call?
Present, we have Michelle, Jeanette, and Kay. Absent, we have Rakina, Jessica, Candace, and Jose. And remote, we have Carolyn.
So Carolyn, there's one other option, which is that because of AB 2449, every committee member is allowed to choose to join virtually 2 times. It's only the 3rd time as an emergency that you need to take a vote. Otherwise, you can just tell us that you're joining us virtually and it's done. That's up to you.
Yeah, I'm almost wanting to use the emergency to save those other 2. I had already disclosed I was diagnosed with cancer and had a surgery a couple of days ago. So I'm joining virtually under a surgery just a couple of days ago.
Not a problem. I was just giving all the options. So maybe we should, what are the next items? Does everyone know, well, everyone is 3 people, but is there any objection to just starting with the housing one because we don't need any kind of a quorum for that? We're not doing a vote.
Well, can we proceed with our presentation, our guest presentation?
Yeah,
without a
Camilla is
quorum?
our guest presentation.
We have the emergency representative as well, correct?
He's just
No.
here for any
Oh,
if
I
there-
see,
he's
okay,
observing.
forgive me, all right.
So I'm gonna suggest that we do Camilla and do the housing ordinance.
If you wanna come, we can.
It's, so on the housing, I took the liberty to just take some notes with my friend Allison, but really asked the committee what their, actually, I would like you to do a presentation of explaining it, and then we can go from there with, comments and people's thoughts about it, Camilla.
Sounds good. So we have a PowerPoint that we can do today.
I'm gonna bring it up.
Okay.
I need to share it as well. We'll bring it up and share it. So
Let me know when it's good to go.
Secret everything.
There's some clicks.
I was worried about
oh no, no problem.
breaking the law.
Okay, we're gonna have to do it this way because it's not.
Is it gonna take a few minutes? Cause we can,
Oh, okay, there we go.
Is it working?
Yes.
Can we start or no yet? Yes. Okay. So my name is Camila Eastland and I'm the project manager for the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance Development. The public review for this project started on January 20th and actually closed on March 7th, but we're continuing receiving public input on the project until we go to public hearings. We have a planning commission workshop scheduled for March 24th. We can share the link to our website, so later maybe you can sign up and make sure you get informed once we send more e-blasts related to next steps and meetings. But today I want to present you with a project overview. So starting with a project overview, so inclusionary housing is a type of policy that aims to create affordable housing by requiring new development to include a percentage of the new units as affordable housing for moderate and lower income households. Incentives can also be provided to help offset the cost of providing affordable housing units. And alternative compliance are required by the state to be included as part of the project in order to help any project that cannot provide the set aside percentage of affordable housing on site. So this alternative compliance may take a form of an annual fee, rehabilitation of units, land donation, or other types of alternative compliance. So inclusionary housing works by using something that is called a deed restriction. So this means that the affordability requirement is recorded on the deed of that property, regulating the affordability level of the unit. This is a mechanism that is used to ensure that the units stay affordable during the required period of time that the ordinance would set. This requirement will apply to all units constructed in compliance with the inclusionary housing program, including units produced through that alternative compliance method that I mentioned. So those would be, for example, rehabilitation of units. A developer would rehabilitate that unit and place a deed restriction to make sure they stay affordable during the period of time, or constructing deed restricted affordable housing units in a different location than the market rate, which would also be deed restricted, or building, for example, an ADU and make that a deed restricted unit. So this slide shows the comparison in price between the affordable housing unit and a market rate unit. So this is only comparing the unincorporated county. In 2022, the median home sales price for all homes in the unincorporated county was approximately 620,000. But lower income family can only afford approximately 311,000, and a very low income family can afford 146,000. So the inclusionary housing program will ensure that these units can also be produced as part of market rate development. So we include a range of different affordable levels of units. We have received two main board directions for this project. One in February 2021, when the board directed staff to prepare an inclusionary housing ordinance that would apply to all housing projects. And then in 2021, in August, the board also requested that the inclusionary housing project include options to capture land value increases associated with general plan amendment projects. So general plan amendment projects are projects that seek changes to the general plan to increase the density that would otherwise apply to the project. They're also called GPAs. Multiple pieces of input were considered in crafting the county's draft inclusionary housing ordinance. So the ordinance was informed by best practice research, public input, and economic analysis. So that's the one that has a blue click. Thank you.
Oh, got it.
Yes, so the best practice research and public input provided the basis for the development of the draft ordinance and options that we have available for public review. And the economic analysis evaluated and determined the feasibility of those options. So the ordinance includes all the typical components that you would see in an inclusionary housing ordinance. So that includes the minimum project set aside for ordinance applicability, the required set aside for projects that we need to provide affordable housing, alternative compliance methods for projects that cannot provide affordable housing on site, and incentives to help with the project feasibility. So today we'll discuss and get your input in all of those components. So here the slide just summarizes some of the best practice research we did. So we review ordinances from other jurisdictions. We also had interviews and conversations with staff from other jurisdictions to discuss how they implement the inclusionary housing ordinance. We also compiled research from universities and think tanks to determine the best way to craft the program for the county, unincorporated county. Okay, so this slide summarizes some of the outreach meetings we conducted as part of this project. So during this outreach meetings, we discussed the best practice research components that we found when we were researching programs. And we discussed those with members of the community, affordable housing developers and advocates, market rate developers, equity groups, labor unions, and environmental groups. So we held interviews in 2020, and then we presented findings from our best practice research to the Board of Supervisors in February of 2021. And then last year in February and March, we held more focus group meetings. In June, we had a public workshop, and on March 1st of this year, we had a second public workshop, a public meeting. In order to ensure that this program does not affect overall housing production, we conducted an economic analysis to evaluate how the program would affect development feasibility within the unincorporated county. So this analysis resulted in recommendations that the program not apply within the areas that are in pink, as we found that projects within the pink areas would not be feasible if an affordability requirement was applied to them. So the inclusionary housing requirement would apply to the areas in green in that map.
So,
Yeah,
is it, I wanted to make it like succinct so that people have more time to talk.
okay, so yeah, so let's go, I'll expedite a little bit. So this slide shows the options that are available for public review. We have options for projects that are general plan compliant, and then GPAs, and this is related to the minimum project size that the ordinance should apply. It could be, you know, you could provide a recommendation that it applies to all projects or projects more than 5 units or more than 10 units. You can go next. We also have the minimum affordability requirement. there is a range of different affordability requirement. As I mentioned, we did an economic analysis or different, like 29 different scenarios. For example, saying 5% very low to 10% moderate, 15 up to 20% depending on the affordability levels. And we're asking input on that specific set aside in terms of what should apply for the ordinance. There's also options for alternative compliance. In this case would be for projects that don't provide the units on site. They could potentially do off-site development, land dedication, in lieu fees, ADUs, or rehabilitation of units. So we're seeking your feedback on those as well, if you think those should be included. And then there are some conditions in terms of when they would apply. So you can go next one. For in lieu fee, for example, we could require all projects to show that they need to use an alternative compliance, or it could be flexible in terms of the in lieu fee. This would be the project would pay a fee as opposed to building those units. The fee is the cost of developing the housing, affordable housing within their project. And then some of the options we have available is to make this an option for all projects, or only for small projects like that are less than 10 units. So for example, if you recommend that the ordinance apply to every housing project, you could say, okay, for small projects, they could just pay a fee as opposed to having to build those units. For alternative compliance, off-site development, you can click another one. We have location criteria for off-site development, land dedication, and rehabilitation of units. For example, you could recommend that if a project that is not building those units within the development and is also not providing those units within a mile from the development, that they be outside very high fire. Go next one. Or they can be, you can recommend that they be in an infill area or BMT efficient area, or that they be that they be in a high resource area.
So I think for the most part, people have actually read through it. That's,
Okay.
I just
Do you want to start the discussion?
Yeah, I wanted you basically just to give them an
Okay.
idea of what the, as you did, that you had started in 2018 and. that
Okay,
these are the
yeah.
steps.
So we started this direction, we got first in 2018 from the Board of Supervisors. They asked us to look at studying inclusionary housing, and we did that, and we returned in 2021 with an economic analysis. And then during that meeting, the board directed us to prepare an inclusionary housing program. So that was an inclusionary housing program that would apply to all projects and also that could capture land value increases. So we have prepared a program, we have options available for public review, and we're looking for input on those specific criteria for ordinance applicability, minimum set aside, and alternative compliance and incentives.
So, I can either start off or just, I think everyone received, did you get the email that?
Yes.
Just to give us some ways of thinking about the most blatant thing that I saw was that it is not including accessibility at all. And I started doing some outreach to the city of San Diego. This is the county and it's only the unincorporated areas. It is not including the 18 incorporated areas. But the city of San Diego, I know from past years of being involved in the disability community, had I thought, an excellent structure of 3 different tiers for accessibility when it came to housing or stores or things of that nature. So actually Molly Chase, who's the policy person for the Housing Commission, is right now trying to get those actual definitions, which I'll share as soon as I get them. But in the meantime, I think to me that was the blatant thing, that if this is a one-time thing, this housing ordinance that the county is putting together, and they've already spent 5 years on it, and I think it's really important that we try to advocate as much as we can right now for them to include accessibility. In the past, those were two words that were always married, affordability and accessibility. And for me, and this is just my thoughts, I would like to see a minimum of 50% of anything that's affordable, because the highest rising group of houseless people right now, our neighbors, are seniors. And so it is an issue of affordability and accessibility. So I personally would like to see a minimum of 50% of everything that gets decided for accessibility to be affordable as well. And that anything that is, maybe incentives placed on the market rate and the moderate, incomes, like in a development, if they decide that 20% has to be affordable, I'd like to see incentives attached to the other 80% if they are also accessible, not also, if they are accessible. Anyway, that's just my start of thoughts, and then of course I had comments all the way through. Committee members, is there,
We've had two more join us.
okay,
Regina.
yay, Rakina,
And
and
Jessica.
Jessica. Do you wanna do a very quick intro, and then we're doing the housing because Camilla is here, and she just went through a brief presentation of it, and I know that you read it too. Do you wanna do some, just a very quick intro, Jessica?
Do I hold it? This is my first time with the microphone. My name is Jessica Kramer. I live in North County and am appointed to the Committee for Persons with Disabilities by Jim Jesden. And I am a disability rights advocate in the community, and I specialize in people experiencing homelessness as well as law enforcement reform for persons with disabilities and seniors. Thank you.
Thank you. You did very well on your first time on the microphone. Regina?
Hi, I'm Regina Boyd Kamei. I'm a teacher in San Diego Unified School District who has spent most of my career over the last 18 years teaching students with disabilities. I'm also the wife and primary caregiver of a paralyzed veteran who is in a wheelchair, and he's a tetraplegic. And I am holding an at-large seat for this committee.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, since we have Carolyn on the line waiting for her agenda, and we have a quorum now, can we call for a vote?
Yes,
Okay,
we
thank you.
can. There are two items that we were waiting to get a quorum for,
Super.
so we'll do those quickly. So Carolyn is joining us for the committee members that just came in virtually, and is asking to use the emergency request provided by AB 2449 to join us virtually. So do I hear a motion to for us to approve that or to authorize that?
I move for authorization.
Tara, I would love to explain just real quick so everybody understands. I just recently got a cancer diagnosis, and I had a surgery a few days ago, and so I'm asking an emergency join for that reason.
I move for approval and authorization, and Carolyn, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope that you'll recover quickly.
I second.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
If I hear any opposition, we can just do this by acclamation. And yes, we hope to see you soon, since they're making us a
Thank
better
you.
person. That was my reluctance. The minutes, we might as well just quickly break, sorry Camilla, just to do the minutes while we have the quorum. Were there any changes to the minutes, any questions about the minutes? Hearing none, is there, do I have a motion to pass the minutes?
I make a motion that
Go ahead.
Okay, Regina says yes, and
Please,
Jeanette
motion.
seconds it. Any opposition to passing the minutes as is? Any opposition? We'll do that by application as well. Thanks, okay, back to the discussion of the housing. So is, any comments starting with committee members? Somebody must have some comments on
Do
it.
we want to, Madam Chair, sorry,
It's
do
okay.
we want to do our vote for our officers before Caroline
No.
leaves us? Okay.
That's placed on the agenda.
Okay.
Where, so where, we have someone here that's waiting for this. What, Regina, I'm gonna stop picking on people. Do you have any comments? Do you have a chance to read it, and do you have any comments related to the draft housing ordinance? And also, did you get the email that I asked David to send out with some comments?
Yes.
Okay, you
So
can pass, I'm not putting heavy pressure on you.
I did get to skim over some of it, and I think that Michelle, to your comment earlier, I think the idea of incentivizing for more accessibility would be awesome. I think, the other thing I think is that some of those specs that are going to be used, it would really be helpful to do some sort of a walkthrough with people who have various types of disabilities. So, as I said, my husband is a paralyzed veteran. So the VA gave us a grant to have modifications made in our home. When the people came to make those modifications, they said, this is how we do it. And I said, that won't work. His wheelchair is bigger because he's in a motorized wheelchair. It's bigger. And when you have to go to the bathroom, you're on the run. You don't walk as slowly and carefully, like as a person who's walking, right? I don't walk as slowly and carefully as I can when I gotta go to the bathroom. So if you're in a wheelchair that moves with much more force, you move quickly and you don't do your best all the time cutting corners. As a result, there are pieces of wall that are constantly on my floor because he hits the walls, because even though I said, I think it needs to be a little wider, they didn't do that. And so, and I think that for different types of disabilities, different types of access are needed. And while it might be difficult to make something that's perfect for every person in every situation, I think that having people who actually have disabilities come and do walkthroughs, even if it's in a mocked up space, will help give you an idea of how to actually make it handicap accessible instead of something that we believe will be accessible for someone. That would conclude my comments.
Okay,
The only comment I have, I had to look up the number on section 6341.1D. I agree with Michelle's concept and that the affordable housing inclusionary function and fund should also include rehab housing. And I say that because I live in a dwelling that was built in 1959 and it is not accessible. However, if we could include existing structures in this, or if it is included and I'm misunderstanding, I think that would really help with the stock.
So to clarify, you're saying that if rehabilitation of units were an option that the board were to direct us to do, that they require those rehabilitated units to also become accessible.
That the fund include the rehabilitation of accessible units.
it does do that. It actually, the part that I loved about that is it actually mandates that they would get, well, if it passes, it would mandate that you get double the units. So in other words, if the housing ordinance in the end says, I'm making up numbers, 20%, then that would give you 40% if it's rehab.
Nice.
Carolyn, did you have a chance to look at ordinance by chance? And do you have any comments on it?
Hi, I'm sorry, were you asking me that question?
You can pass and. Are you muted, Carol?
No, I actually was.
I just
aligning
asked
with,
if you had,
No, I was the question that I was gonna ask was actually just asked, so I'm good.
okay. I'm gonna come back to myself at the end, because I'm gonna have Katie's help to go through all of my assessments. Jeanette?
I don't have any specific questions. I did review the comments and they all make sense to me to the extent that I have delved into this. I'm just wondering why accessibility was not part of this discussion over the last 5 years.
They weren't told to do it by the board.
So we were asked to develop an inclusionary housing ordinance. As you may know, we have a housing element that includes a lot of different programs. So this is not the only strategy that we have in place in terms of addressing housing, including housing for special needs population. We do have programs that are looking at increasing opportunities for housing for seniors, for example. There are other projects, but inclusionary housing ordinances typically speak to requiring new development to provide affordable housing units. There aren't really inclusionary housing ordinance that talking about other things like ADA accessibility. So this would be a new different than all of the other ordinances that are related to inclusionary housing. If we were to add those incentives to help create more opportunities for developers to use ADA accessible, features in the future, housing to be developed. But that's why it wasn't included, because it was not necessarily something that is typically included as part of an inclusionary housing ordinance. However, jurisdictions may have other ordinances related to that topic.
Actually, there are other places that do include it, just so you know that.
Do you know which jurisdictions that have, sorry, I really wanted some examples too, because we're studying and looking at those best practice research. We'll be discussing that as part of the workshop we're doing with the planning commission. So you don't have to give them now, but maybe later if you can give us the name of some of the jurisdictions that include that as part of their inclusionary housing ordinance, that would be really, really helpful.
Okay, and also if you can let me know offline which ones you actually
Okay, yeah.
looked at.
Mhm.
I know Lemon Grove is just starting to look at one, so some of them have not
Lemon Grove,
even done it. No, they haven't done it yet.
right.
I'm just saying, I don't know of the 18 incorporated cities, I don't know how many, other than San Diego and Chula Vista, have something in place.
Right, so we looked at all of the inclusionary housing ordinances in the region. And as I said, it's really something that is not gonna be in the inclusionary housing chapter, but it's possible that some of those jurisdictions have, requirements that would, a developer would have to provide some ADA accessible units, but that wouldn't be in the inclusionary housing chapter. You know
But it
what I mean?
can be,
But it can be, yes.
and so
That's what you're
we are
recommending.
gonna ask for it to be included in this one.
Right, mhm.
And it sounds like we have to do some lobbying of our supervisors to get it included now. Not waiting for another 5 years for it to be included in the future. Jessica?
No, please.
Hi, Mike Madrid here, I'm planning manager at Long Range Planning. I just wanted to comment on how we're putting together this ordinance right now, and part of this outreach effort where we're reaching out to different cities, reaching out to different advocacy groups and things like that. We want to make sure that we're taking this feedback that we hear today and do what we can to incorporate it as soon as possible. If you look through the ordinance, the options that are available in there are not necessarily set in the ordinance, as in, we're going to go to the board and they're just going to approve it. There are a series of options that are in there that they can consider. And so we still want to be developing this ordinance as we do outreach with everyone and see what we can do to include the feedback that we're getting into the ordinance as well.
So that there is the availability to speak, to add accessibility.
Correct.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned before, we're gonna be doing a planning commission workshop on March 24th. And we are gonna share this feedback from this group with the planning commission. And you guys are all welcome to attend that meeting and share your feedback during the meeting as well. And the goal of the meeting is to discuss, because those options that I shared with you are options that were brought up during the outreach sections that we had with different groups. So we'll make sure to include your feedback and discuss that with the planning commission and revisit those options before we go to the board of supervisors.
I have a question for Randall in reference to that. Do they allow public viewing by teleconference or Zoom, or is everything in person?
The Brown Act is just for public officials,
Bodies.
boards, yeah, so how they do it, any group can add. As long as the public has access, they have to have access in person, but if they want to add additional ability to view on Zoom, that is totally fine, it's above and beyond what the Brown Act.
Are the people who are participating publicly allowed to make public comment under those circumstances?
Yes, you should have a way to.
They
do
are,
it. So
okay, well, that's good to know, thank you.
Are there any, am I missing anyone on the?
Jessica,
I'm ready.
Oh, I guess.
Hi. Okay, the first thing I would like to do. Oh.
Okay, I was just confirming that public comments, you guys can provide your public comments during that hearing. Yeah, thank you.
So yes, I, of course, am very concerned when accessibility is not part of conversation, especially a long-term conversation around housing. One of my other hats is that I'm an advocate for people experiencing homelessness. This is based on my lived experience of becoming homeless due to my disability, becoming dependent on SSI, Social Security Disability, because of my ability to self-care and work. And as a result of being on SSI at a extreme poverty level income, I was no longer able to sustain housing. So I'm a very passionate advocate when it comes to people with disabilities experiencing homelessness. And as I've been working in the community as an advocate, not working, but representing my experience to help others in the community. So, yeah. It's also Candy, I'm not sure if she's trying to reach us.
Yes,
Just calling you back.
it was a candy.
It was Candy, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Daughter was there, where she wanted to join.
no, I'm texting her with the link.
Oh, thank you, we can do that before?
No.
Oh. Okay. So I'll just let her
Sorry, Ms. Jessica.
Oh, that's okay.
I'll take over for Ms. Michelle, since she's stepping away, but
Thank you.
Thank you. One of my experiences is that there is an incredible overlap between people with disabilities and homelessness. I mean, sometimes I feel like it's almost 100%, but we know that's not true because some people just have hard experiences. But really, I mean, percentage wise, it's an overwhelming majority. And so if we're building future housing and we're not looking at how to accommodate persons with disabilities, we're essentially excluding people with disabilities experiencing homelessness from future housing. And we're exacerbating our homeless crisis, and we're causing further suffering to a population of people with disabilities that already have a lot of obstacles to overcome. Second to that, I am a part of two organizations. One is called REACH, which does disability specialty homeless outreach and advocacy. And I would very much like you to include that group, as well as the Lived Experience Advisors Group, which is a very diverse group of individuals with lived experience of homelessness that are weighing in on the conversation around homelessness. Also with many individuals with lived experience with disabilities and a disability advocacy lens. So those are two organizations that I think could be very helpful. One of the things that I'm very hopeful to see is that we begin to make accommodations for disabilities beyond physical barrier disabilities. That includes especially sensory disabilities. One of the greatest obstacles to my stable housing is that I have a brain injury and I can be noise sensitive to certain intensities of noise. And I can have seizures from that. And so if I'm living in a place without enough insulation or with poorly rated windows, or various things, that could cause me to lose my housing and has caused me to lose my housing in the past. So I would like for us to consider how we can include the largest growing disability sector, which is people with neurocognitive challenges. That's everything from autism, developmental disabilities, mental health disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, dementia and Alzheimer's. It's such a huge spectrum of people, and we've just begun to have conversations about what accommodations for that population might look like. And I really want us to continue to be the innovators and working towards innovative conversations and solutions. One of the things that I've come up with my peer group in conversations around this after speaking to Michelle about what some of those accommodations might look like, we were discussing something called a sensory safe space. It's akin to what Disney and Legoland are doing for people with, it's highlighted for people with autism, but it extends to all disabilities, where if somebody is feeling overwhelmed or having a hard time, there's a place where they can go where there's headphones, quiet space, dark space, just a comforting space. And in the Lived Experience Advisors Group, we are working on a shelter bill of rights with the county I believe it's the County Housing Commission. It's possible it's the San Diego Housing Commission. I have to look back. But we've been discussing ways that shelters could be safer for people with disabilities, since there's an overlap with individuals who aren't accepted into shelters or who are rejected and put on a do not return list in shelters, who actually have disability needs that aren't being met, or the disability isn't being noticed and accommodated, and instead disciplinary measures are put forward. And in that work, one of the solutions that came up for shelters was also to look at a sensory safe space. So I think when we look at future accommodations, we want to consider, is it wheelchair accessible? But we also want to look at, are there units that are sensory accessible? And that can be anything from extra drywall to the position the unit is, to also textures for vision impairment was something I thought about. We learned in the MTS meeting that the textures on the sidewalk, when you go from a curb to the street, you see the yellow bumps. We learned that that was so a person with vision impairment could feel a textural change to know that they're safe. So I think textural changes could be a really good accommodation. Essentially though, I just think we really need to consider this moving forward. Thank you.
So you're getting a little bit of a plethora, is that Candy?
Candy is on the call.
Yeah, it's here.
I'm afraid to just shut it off because I don't know if it's
It's on.
That's fine, I'm just gonna shut it.
Hi, Candy.
Welcome. I think you're muted, Candy, she's driving. She's driving her kids back from school. Kay, would you mind going over just briefly, like the notes that I made? To just, because several people have asked me about it.
Do you want me to read the 2 pages?
Yeah, maybe one at a time in the section. I think that we
I
started
could
off with.
share it if we,
Yeah, if you can do that.
Do you have a copy of it?
yes.
Just-
Michelle Todd's gonna put it on the screen so everyone can read it.
Okay, perfect. And then just, can you read the first one?
So for accessibility, there is no mention of accessibility married to the affordability. This is a major problem. For the disabled community, this is a very significant oversight. My request is that a minimum 50% of the affordable housing should likewise be accessible, and that there be incentives to promote construction of additional accessible units beyond that minimum.
Okay, I'm gonna just quickly here add what I was looking for with the city of San Diego. So they have that first tier is if somebody's going into a store, what is mandated, this is new development. What is mandated is that the entrance has to be wide enough for an average wheelchair. And the bathroom, if it's like a restaurant or something like that, has to be wide enough and have enough space for a wheelchair to be able to be in there. That's they call it visitability. I may not be using the exact right word, but it means if you're just gonna visit like a medical office or something like that, that's all that's required. The next level is what they do in the new development, little things like I learned that an extra wire to where the smoke detectors are allows you to get a smoke detector that's both audible and visual. So if you have somebody who is deaf, the smoke alarm can blink to get them out of the house. So it'll be audible and visual, and it only costs a half a penny. Well, at least back in the day when I was doing that advocating, it was a half a penny, but now it might be 10 cents to put the extra wire in before you close up the drywall, when you're adding all the rest of the electrical. It's super cheap. But if you try to do that later, that's where it's really expensive because you've got to break down the walls and then re-drywall it and paint it and all of that. So that's why that's really critical. That's what I'd like to see us considering is what they call, and I don't have the right words, that's why I called Molly this morning, but it has to do with like preparing new development to easily be able to be accessible. So the grab bars in the bathroom, for example, you wouldn't have to put the grab bars in, just like you wouldn't have to put the smoke detector in, but you would have the hardware outside, ready to be attached. It's that kind of thing is super cheap if you put it in at the beginning and then you're drywalling around it and waterproofing and all of that and painting. So that level or that tier is what I am personally most interested in seeing incorporated. Then the third level is, of course, if you actually are gonna live in that space, it does need, not just the space to get the wheelchair in, but it needs the grab bars and it needs, just other things that would make it easier to actually live in that space if you are disabled. So that's just briefly on that. What was the next thing, Katie?
Definitions, section 1100 of the zoning ordinance, subsections 2 and 3. Point 1, clarification, is purchase mortgage insurance included in the monthly housing payments calculation?
Yes. No, the mortgage, yes. PMI.
Mortgage insurance.
For
Oh, what did I say? Was it purchase what?
Is purchase mortgage insurance included in the monthly housing payments calculation?
Okay, because I don't think it
Yes,
actually, it didn't specify that. So you might want to add that.
It should include the taxes and insurance.
It does.
Doesn't develop, doesn't develop.
Can you pull it up?
What would be the mortgage?
So
It does
the
show the other things.
So when someone comes to qualify for purchase a affordable housing unit, the Department of Housing and Community Development will make sure that the cost of the housing unit is not gonna exceed 30% of that person's income. And that calculation varies depending on the HOA, the property tax, the mortgage insurance, the down payment and all of those things, so that altogether cannot exceed 30%.
Yeah, we understood that. I'm just saying that for clarity, it should be actually specified
Okay,
that would be part of it. That's all I'm saying. We understood that it won't exceed that amount.
okay, so your suggestion is just that we add to the ordinance that purchase mortgage
Right, because you
insurance?
mentioned everything else,
Yes.
but that seemed to be left out, that's all. What was the next one, Katie? I'm trying to go through it quickly because it's,
Point two,
We have a lot on the
issue,
agenda.
please add to the definition of rehabilitated dwelling unit after the word mobile home as defined in Civil Code Section 798.3 subsections A and B.
right, that mobile homes, I would like to see added as part of the rehabilitation. It shouldn't just be buildings. But if there are mobile homes, that's another way to add to the usable stock at this time. What else?
Applicability, section 6341.b subsection 1. The point is preference on options. Prefer option 1 over the other 2 options.
Oh, I don't remember what that actually says.
Option 1 would be, I think this is affordable housing. Would be for what projects are required to provide affordable housing. So maybe option 1 would be 5 units for projects that are general plan compliant,
Oh,
and
then,
then 1 unit for GPA. Is that your?
I think so, and
Do
the
you
other
recall?
one was, it had to be 10,
Right, yeah, so you are.
so it should be as low as possible
lowest,
to
okay.
require
Mhm,
the affordability.
Yeah.
That was basically what my comment was.
okay,
The next one,
Affordable housing unit compliance, section 6341C, subsection 1. You have 5 notes. The first one is comment of tables. Example of calculation for a project would be easier to understand if 100 units was used and the same number of units.
Yeah, so what you did is you talked about the rental being as if you had 40 rental units and the sale being 30. And that's very hard to compare oranges to oranges, apples to apples.
mhm,
So to me, the best would be using 100 and trying to do that comparison.
okay.
So because it's just hard to compare it.
Madam Chair, I'd like to jump in here. We have, if we go through these item by item, we still have an additional 13 bullets left. And for the sake of time, all of the committee members have made our comments and we've read these. These have been entered into the public record. Would it be possible to request that a conversation take place with you and the county staff person outside of the meeting so we can proceed with our other agenda items? I'm in fear that we might lose our quorum.
We're not gonna lose the quorum we have that is physically here.
Just for a time check, it is 3 o'clock.
It's 3:01 PM, so we're an hour into our meeting and we haven't.
Okay, the point was for us to actually be able to do this because they're making an exception in allowing us to give this feedback, and this is the one time we get to actually influence. We're gonna have to live with this for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
I just wanna clarify that I received those comments and they're already gonna be part of the public record. And
They've already been what?
yeah, your comments have already been received and are gonna be part of the public record and are gonna be shared with the planning commission. So just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, that's fine. My point is I want people attention.
But of course, if you wanna have a discussion, we can have a discussion. I know you have some questions that you put in the document as well. We're happy to discuss that with you. But I just wanted to clarify that your comment has been received and is
Yeah, that's
already
fine.
in the record.
But part of my reason for bringing it up here is because I was hoping it would also make other people comment about those issues.
Well, I for one have read all of the material and I had one question pertaining to one of the bullets, which has already been satisfied.
Right, but other people have, or as they hear it.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the rest of the committee, but I'm satisfied with the information that's been presented. and don't feel the need to take the time to go through the additional 13 bullet points with the staff.
Can I ask a clarification? I was under the impression that there was still time to get feedback from the community. Is that correct?
That is
Today.
correct.
That was why I asked for the
We-
exception.
We had a 45-day public review. It's a public review that we do with ordinances, but we'll continue receiving feedback because like I said, we're gonna do a workshop with the planning commission and this is not gonna go to the board of supervisors until later. So we are gonna be revisiting those options to add the additional input we're receiving from the public, from the groups and from the planning commission. But the official deadline for public review that closed on March 7th.
Is the workshop something that members of the public can attend?
Yes,
But there aren't more workshops, there's only the planning commission, just like it's coming to a committee, and yes, you can make comments. But
it's a workshop. We are going, so the planning commission, we're doing a planning commission workshop. So it's not gonna be the date they're gonna make the recommendation. It's gonna be an opportunity for them to discuss the item, hear from the community. And then we're gonna return to the planning commission with options for them to make a recommendation. And then we're gonna go to the board of supervisors. So we're gonna do more of a workshop style meeting with the planning commission on March 24th.
So would it make sense to assume that at that workshop, like our comments and other community comments would have been taken into consideration and like the plan is sort of updated, and then at March 24th? Or was it?
March 24th is the date
Okay,
of the
so
workshop,
that on March 24th,
which is next.
theoretically, some of those comments would be a part of what's going to be discussed.
So on March 24th, we'll share with the planning commission all the comments we have received. So you're not gonna see changes in the options on March 24th, but there's gonna be a discussion about the comments, including all the comments you guys are providing right now. We're gonna discuss that with the planning commission and, potentially make other changes to the options before we return to them for a recommendation.
And they themselves may request additional
Yes.
changes based on the comments and any input from the public, I
Yeah,
understand.
they might, but this is our opportunity to specifically, that's why I asked her to come. Is because this is the very end of passing this.
Well, let me ask the
This,
staff.
This is Carolyn, I wanted. Sorry.
Yeah, Carolyn,
My only input, because I've read Michelle's bullet points and I like the summation of that and some other of the board's comments. Coming from the veteran space, every time cost of living, the COLA is adjusted up, the 100% total and permanent disabled veterans that are here in the county, they are priced out of low-income affordable housing because the monthly stipend for 100% total and permanent through the VA puts them over that threshold limit. So my 2 cents would be, hopefully the county will consider allowing some sort of exception within the veteran space that covers 100% total and permanent, because their monthly disability check, again, puts them out of the range of affordable housing and even low income.
it's a good comment, Carolyn. All right, I want to, if anyone else has anything to add, I will have the conversation with Carol offline.
Yeah, I have one more thing.
I do think that this is our one major opportunity, which is why the end of the feedback period was March 7th. She agreed to come to our meeting to get feedback from our committee. And it is at the very end of the process. This is gonna get done in the next month or two. And there's not a lot more changes because they've been doing these changes all along.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you know what lived experience or lived experience disability or homeless organizations have possibly weighed into this conversation so far?
We have a list of stakeholders, housing stakeholders, housing advocates. We met, for example, with San Diego Housing Federation, and a lot of different organizations, including PAC, for example, and other organizations that work with homeless individuals. And they have been part of focus group meetings that we held and workshop meetings as well.
Okay, great. The HEAL group,
I'm not
that's the
sure.
San Diego Housing Federation's lived experience group.
Okay, yeah.
We have gone to the San Diego Housing Federation's policy committee. And like Camila was saying, this is the PC workshop is the first stop at the boards, if you will, the PC and the board of supervisors. After we get feedback from the planning commission, as well as the public comment that can be made at the planning commission workshop, we'll then look at the options that are in the ordinance and see what we can do to address some of the feedback that we got during those hearings. Given the comment period as well, we're here to get your feedback, even though it's after the public review date, because we know we're still going to be workshopping things on the 24th. So if you would like to get us in contact with REACH or the Lived Experience Advisors Group, we'd love to meet with them. So
Thank you so much.
Okay, Katie, what is the next item on our agenda?
AB 2449, open meetings, local agencies and teleconferences.
Just that there hasn't been any update on that. I did reach out to Blanca Rubio's office. I don't have, thus far there isn't, I don't have anything else to add.
I thank you for joining us today. Have a good weekend.
Again, please
Thank
send
you.
us your comments, continue sending them, and we'll make sure to share that with the planning commission.
Thank you so much. And Michelle, thank you for your diligent read through and very professional recommendations. When I grow up, I would like people like you.
I agree. Me too.
I will give a friend named Allison Snow credit, because he literally read it through with me and transcribed the notes.
Bye. So we have Randall in the hot seat, so I'd like to ask him a couple of
Okay,
questions.
hang on, he's not
Is that
next.
right? Oh, he's not.
No,
Well, I'm not sure if I'm 2449 or virtual access to full meetings.
oh, I guess
but-
it could
It's
be,
both.
Yeah, it's both,
it
just
could,
saying,
yeah, that's there,
yeah, so if you want, just so you know, I
no,
have,
that's fine,
yeah,
I just wanted to, I thought we had your name next to the next, that's fine. So we're combining AB 2449 and what was,
the next item is virtual access to public meetings.
yeah, that's where
That was the letter that you were gonna draft for other
Got it.
organizations.
let's do
Okay,
the 2449.
well, I wanted to let, Claudia called me, and said that you had reached out to her, unfortunately, she wasn't able to come today. So we had a good conversation about some options, for you, and also discussed this with Todd. So we're back, emergencies ended, we're supposed to meet in person, right? But I also know this group has struggled, and this is something I've heard from you in the past, even before, so I was like 3 or 4 years ago, before COVID. What options do you have as a group? Because sometimes I understand because of your situations, coming together and meeting in person, it can be difficult, right? So there are a few things to talk about. One, we're dealing with the Brown Act, so if we want to change the Brown Act, we need to change. There is a bill pending, and I brought a few copies, I'll give this to Todd. It's SB 411. And this one was just.
Who is the author?
The author, oh, he just took it, it was, who's the author, Todd, it's right there at the top.
Lose.
There's an author and a co-author.
Tantino.
Oh,
good.
He's probably gonna be a
Nice
speaker.
bar.
Yay.
I'm probably not saying that right, but.
Michelle, you know him, don't you?
Portantino?
So there are two bills that I'm aware of, but this is probably the one that's most relevant to you. Another one is to extend AB 361, which is the emergency rules that we were dealing with, past this year, because as of the end of this year, AB 361 will go away. We can't use it right now because there's no declared emergency, but it's still on the books. I don't think that's gonna help you too much, but this bill would
It
actually,
sunsets 361, sunsets
this,
even,
the end of 2023. And AB 2449 sunsets the end of 2025. So in 2026, even the emergency circumstances just cause reasons for teleconferencing won't exist anymore, unless things change.
So
because I
it's
know the federal is not gonna sunset and is not gonna go away until May.
Yeah, that's a declaration of emergency, that's a different situation, but I'm talking about the Brown Act laws. So this bill, I found out about a couple weeks ago, would give each agency and their advisory boards the discretion to do virtual meetings regardless if there's an emergency.
Which one?
This is called SB 411.
I know, but when you say this bill, I don't know which one.
Yeah, this bill, SB 411.
But you mentioned two different bills.
Right, the other one, again, would just be to extend AB 361.
It wouldn't permanently fix our problem.
No, it would only be an emergency circumstance, or when an emergency is declared. And hopefully, we don't want one of those, right? We don't wanna look forward to those. So one option is to use your ability to advocate for change to legislation. You are one of the boards, commissions, and committees created by the board of supervisors. So you can, as a group, elect to make a recommendation to the board of supervisors to support legislation. You can make that recommendation to Todd will send that to Edga, and then Edga will present that to the board.
Could you say that one more time?
So all of the boards and commissions that the board of supervisors created is subject to board policy A74. And in there's a provision for any of the groups, if they see a state legislation they like, or federal, to make a recommendation for the board of supervisors to make, to commit the county to support, oppose a piece of legislation.
We've done that previously and we do it through Carolyn Smith, I believe.
Carolyn Smith, she's with the Economic Development and Government Affairs, EDGA
Correct.
department.
Oh, please don't use the acronyms.
I know, there's so many.
No, but it leaves people out and then you're,
I am talking about Carolyn's department.
okay, that's what's helpful. And please say the full name of the department,
I am still learning it because it used to be a different acronym as of a year ago, so.
but no acronyms, just say the
Correct.
full way.
So you make that recommendation, prepare it, and you can submit it to Todd and Carolyn, and they will analyze, review it, and then share it with the board of supervisors, and they can decide whether to take action. If they do not, you, of course, as individuals, can always advocate to the bill author and support that.
Brenda,
So-
would it be inappropriate for our chairwoman to reach out to the other chairs of like-minded county boards and commissions and write a joint letter?
Yes and no. So until the board of supervisors says, yes, we want to commit the county,
Okay,
you know,
then we
you
can do
can't,
a
you can't use
consortium.
county letterhead. You
Got
can definitely talk to them, let them know, say, hey, we're interested, we're gonna recommend this to our board of supervisors, absolutely, like that's fine.
So we can
You just
collaborate
can't-
with the other chairs.
Yes,
Okay,
just don't ever commit the county until the
Right.
board of supervisors says yes.
right, but if we know the chair of the Veterans Commission, or the Substance Abuse Commission, we can ask
We
them.
don't have to know them, we can just reach out.
Yeah,
I do that all
absolutely.
the time.
Okay,
That's not a problem.
It's not-
I think that would help us, I think it would help us.
Can we in the future make a list of allied boards, committees and commissions? Thank you.
The list is there,
It's
Jessica.
on the
It's
internet.
on, yeah, but it's 130 different commissions, so it all depends on who's the chair at the moment.
Maybe
But
we
it's
should
all there.
review them at a meeting.
I would just like for us to work more, for instance, I've been more involved with the Behavioral Health Advisory Board. And it's direct overlap with mental health disabilities, but they don't speak about mental health from a disability perspective, which I think is very important and it could really both benefit from an allyship.
Would it be possible for us to request at our monthly meeting an update from you on SB 411, just where it's at?
Yeah, I can tell and work with Todd on that. Just so you know, legislation is slow. We just started a new 2-year cycle.
Mhm.
So that means this bill can technically sit on the books for the next 2 years before any action has to be taken. So the downside to this is it's slow.
Mhm.
And changes to Brown Act have been very rare. We had 2 changes recently because of COVID. That was a unique situation. Rarely do we see changes to the Brown Act. So this is always an option, but I also want, this is an option that's a hard one, a lot of roadblocks, a lot of politics. I don't know if the state legislature as a whole would be supportive of this. I don't know. I didn't listen to all the conference last year when they adopted 2449. But last year we learned they fell on the side of, no, we want the public officials in person as much as possible.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not the one following each of these bills.
There are certain bills that get assigned to us, and this one was assigned to me to follow.
Maybe Caroline Smith would like to come on our Friday afternoons and give us an update on this legislation.
Yeah,
I'm just letting you know, there may not be a lot of change for a while.
Right.
Because
At
we just
best,
started
I mean,
the
at
cycle.
best, the governor would sign it October 1st, and that would be something
That would be the
incredibly aggressive.
but it's already been assigned to a committee.
Yeah, I'd have to check, you can go to the website and
Yeah,
it'll
you go to
always tell you the
linkedin.com.
status.
That's it.
It's introduced on February 9th, so I'm assuming it
Yes.
says.
Usually usually it'll go to it's always usually sent to some
Kind of
committee.
government.
And if it never gets out of committee, it's not gonna go anywhere. So that's one thing to pay attention to at first, is what committee it is in and have they moved.
That's
Is it
why I
called
said-
government or judiciary, do you know?
It wouldn't,
I don't know, I'd have to pull this
Okay,
out.
okay, we can.
I know,
So that's option one, is to monitor this bill and potentially support it, because this seems to be would give you the flexibility you want.
there's also the option that our board of supervisors can not call us a committee. And therefore, we wouldn't necessarily, we can be a group.
So that's option 2, that's what I'm gonna get into next. So, the
But
Brown
I
Act.
have already spoken to several of the chiefs of staff, so you know that.
Okay, so option 2 is, do we change what you are, so you're not subject to the Brown Act? The Brown Act's pretty broad, it does apply to the legislative body, which is the board of supervisors, and all the groups it creates. So to make you not subject to the Brown Act, you'd have to be created apart from the board. So you were created by ordinance. The board of supervisors would have to take action to rescind that ordinance. And basically undo your organization or your group. To create you outside of the Brown Act, it would have to be something created at the staff level rather than by the board. The board does anything to create a group by resolution, ordinance, or policy, you're subject to the Brown Act. So that would mean the board would have to delegate to staff, some department, it could be OEC, it could be CAO's office, whoever it is, to create a stakeholder group. And that stakeholder group would be then subject to the needs of that department.
So there's also the possibility of each of us who it applies to filing a reasonable accommodation. This was actually a conversation I had with Jessica. That if each of us applied or some of us applied and said we need a reasonable accommodation to still be able to stay active, that would have to get dealt with according to the ADA.
It
And
would,
obviously, that's reasonable.
and we would have to look at that. I can tell you there is some advice that may not be the accommodation you get.
That
So
it may not be what?
the accommodation you're seeking, it may not be the accommodation you get. We'd have to analyze that, but the AG has weighed in on these group, on not a group of your nature per se.
You're talking about Rob Bonta?
I haven't looked at this opinion in a while. I have to go back and pull it.
No, when you say the AG, are you talking about the cap?
Not the current one, but there was a prior AG opinion that dealt with the Brown Act and the reasonable accommodation, and it's cited on the Brown Act rather than the accommodation. Not as, because you still have to comply with the Brown Act. So we would have to look to see if that's changed. We'd have to analyze your request. So I can't tell you what we would be able, if we'd be able to get you the accommodation you're seeking. I don't know yet.
But you would be able to get an effective accommodation.
Yes, I just don't know if it's the one you're seeking. Right?
I know that as
And
an individual.
I'm not that, it would have to go through the process, so I'm not gonna tell you what the result will be. Absolutely, you can submit an accommodation request. I will say that.
I
One
know
of
that-
those might be the option 3 that you're gonna be talking
Yes.
about.
Okay, I would just like to say that
I know that there will definitely be times where my disability will prevent me from in-person or a Zoom meeting. And if I felt like I wasn't able to fully participate, the first thing that I would think to do is to make an ADA reasonable modification request. Do you, what would the pathway be in terms of who would I make that request to? And who would be the person to assess reasonableness, and what would the process be to determine what a reasonable and effective accommodation would be?
That'd be a normal process. and
Come through, come through the ADA Title II court.
And when you say the Attorney General's weighed in, does that mean that there have been conversations about disability, accessibility, accommodations, and
Being a
The
member
Brown
of
Act?
a Brown Act body, correct.
Okay.
There's one opinion out
and
there. It's older, so I don't know what things.
Can
I'm
you let
only
me
aware-
know exactly what that was? if it
Yeah,
was?
I have to pull it. I have it in small research.
Yeah, I would appreciate that, because I will directly ask Ron Bonton, he's actually gonna be in town in about 2 weeks.
And they may change their mind. If we ask them to reconsider or whatever, I'm just letting you know, they fell on the side of, no, you're supposed to participate. And we'll have to be a different accommodation. So I will get that for
Not to belabor or detract, but in watching many of the presenters in the Board of Supervisor meetings, they are asking for people to be, the public have been asking for people to be in person, or at least in person and or on camera if you're gonna be remote. So there is a push from the public for continued transparency. And so just to understand that it's
Yeah.
not necessarily that government is against granting teleconference. Government is being held to provide in person.
Right, but on camera is not an issue. You can only
Understand.
do that on-
it could be for someone at some time.
Mhm.
I wanna leave it open to that. I think we can have an and situation here where the public can demand more in-person meetings and more facial accountability, and at the same time, we can make sure that full access, safe and dignified access is granted to persons with disabilities, and that goes for the public as well as for this group.
I'm wondering if you can, I don't know if it would be for Katie or Todd, to send all of us information on the ADA accommodation process. Because I guess I'd like to explore all routes, and I think that is fair, because if something else doesn't work out, then we all submit paperwork for ADA accommodations, because it could happen to any of us, that at a time we need to be accommodated.
Well, I think it would be a little more difficult for you and I, but in Michelle's case, for instance, and she has a sight impairment, and transportation is not being provided for her to attend these meetings. And if I'm understanding Randall, the Brown Act correctly, it also states that she must disclose the address if she were given accommodations.
No, just like Carolyn didn't have to do
Carolyn didn't
that
have to.
because of the 24.
But I think, Todd, to your point, the public would be more sympathetic, and Carolyn has a disability that's preventing her from attending the meeting today. It's short term, where Michelle's is more chronic. But I think despite the transparency expectations, this is a situation or a scenario or a body that would probably be given more grace or exception if they understood the nature of the individuals that
Without a doubt,
compose the
I
committee.
merely am
Right.
sharing that what I have seen from Board of Supervisor
I have
meetings.
been to the supervisor meetings lately and they are no picnic. So,
But the third, I don't know if
Yeah,
you're ready
let
for
me
the
talk
third
about
option.
the last option really quick, and then.
Yes.
I know you guys have a lot more things to
Yes.
cover. So that is, what can we do under the existing standard rules? We're fortunate as that we are part of a county with a lot of facilities. If there was a location, because the way Carolyn I'm sorry, the Carolyn is on?
Yes,
She can only use this a couple of times a year, right? Everybody can only use it
3 times.
2 to 3 times, depending on how many times you meet a year. So all of you have that, if your disability prevents you from attending a meeting, you can take advantage of this rule. 2 to 3 times a year, that's it, right?
Is that for everyone or this committee?
No, every
Everyone.
committee,
This is the state law.
this is AB 2449.
Correct.
So the standard is that everybody has up to 3, so in this case, we wouldn't be using those 3 as like a disability accommodation, that would just be the 3 allowed us if we had an emergency.
As an emergency.
But it's broad enough that if it's a chronic condition, I mean, it's still something you could, it talks about medical and disability in the law. So if you need to take advantage of it this year, next year, or the following year, you have those options for you. Then we have the original teleconferencing rules, and this is the one where we get tripped up on because nobody wants to put their home address on the agenda, right? But this is a discussion we've been having enterprise-wide. The county has a lot of resources and rooms available throughout the county at different facilities, libraries, live well centers, things like that. And I don't know if this is gonna help you or not, I'm just letting you know. If you happen to live or work closer to a different facility rather than downtown, and we can coordinate with DGS, Department of General
Right.
Services, right? If there's a facility where you could call in from a conference room at a library or a Live Center or one of these other facilities, that would be easier, then we put that on the agenda and you can use it as many times as you want, there's no limit on the number. So positive on that, unlimited, downside is you have to put the address.
And you can also do that for a coffee house. I did check that.
Yes, but it's awkward though, because you have to post the agenda at the location, so is the coffee house really gonna want you to post the agenda there, right? So that's.
But I already have permission for my coffee house.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just letting you know,
That's,
it's a logistical concern you have to deal with. But the county is a lot easier to work with because we have a lot of facilities, so if you happen to be aware of something, Todd's gonna make a list of options for you. If any of these work out for you, and it's easier to get there because it's 5 minutes away rather than.
yeah, but that's if you drive, Randall, that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Or
It's
if you're not
walk-
homebound.
That's not walkable and that's not home.
I don't know, if you happen to live near one that's walkable, I don't know, I'm just letting you know, we're trying to be creative.
Yes.
So this is an option, if you happen to live 5 minutes from a library, you can walk there, or you have a friend who'd be willing to drive you a few minutes to a library rather than downtown.
Yeah.
We're trying to help, that's the point, so those are the options, we changed the Brown Act. We disband your group and create you as a new working group through staff. So that would be a little different, we wouldn't have it, there's some downsides to that, is we don't know how many would be, who would be on the committee, how often you meet, all those things would have to be worked out with the department rather than the board, you wouldn't have a direct line to the board as a group. So there's some downsides, and then lastly, of course, we work with whatever other county facilities we have to see if there's a way to accommodate you better at a different facility rather than downtown.
Yeah, not just county facilities, any facility.
But as the county, we can help you with those facilities we have, that's what I'm saying, you can meet somewhere else, you just have to put on the agenda. If you have a nice coffee shop owner who's willing to let you post and do that, that's fine, that's great. But here we have the ear of the department that runs all the county facilities, that's what I'm saying, so maybe there's a way we can help you meet in an easier fashion.
You mean as a group, not individually?
As a group or individually, maybe there's one of you who's never wants to come downtown or it's really hard,
She's
but
saying
you can get to the library or you can get to the North County Live Well Center, like we can work.
So I could go to the Ramona Library, you can go to the.
How will that though be any different from Zoom from home in terms of?
Because that's the Brown Act, Jessica,
Is
so
it out of
it's
county?
specifying
Is it
that you
public?
have to post where you are.
So then you put the
Okay, so
Ramona
it's
Library
posted.
on and people come to the Ramona Library rather than your house.
Okay, so this is because if we want to be at home, there's still the issue of the home address.
Correct.
Okay.
Under the standard teleconferencing rules.
Real quick, I'm curious, I have protections as a domestic violence survivor to not have to use my home address. I'm allowed to use a Safe at Home program, which is a mailbox in Sacramento. So would that be adequate?
No, I never used that.
It wouldn't, because you'd have to have the meeting there, you'd
Yeah,
have to
that's,
be.
So this is this is really coming into some areas where my civil rights feel that they are.
that's why I don't wanna give you, we'd have to think about how those two laws would intersect.
Yeah.
We may need some advice from the AG's office, so.
Yeah, sounds very interesting.
I
That's
would
right.
like to propose that we, thank you for this handout, that we take this next month and we, all of us review this bill language. And that we place an item on the agenda, Madam Chair, for next month's meeting for discussion. And thank you for giving us our options, and then we make decision as a collective body as to which option we prefer. I don't feel prepared to make that decision today.
I wasn't gonna take a vote. I mean,
I was just providing information today.
Thank you, we appreciate
Do
you.
you have another question? I see you.
I just wanna
Jump.
make sure that you were finished with the,
Options.
it's not set as an action.
Those are the options we prepared for you.
okay,
yes.
and the last one is essentially being creative with what we're not calling accommodations.
Right, and that's
Correct.
something
We
we
can
can
only
do.
deal, I don't want to go too far land of accommodations because there's a whole process
So what are we calling
And
these
I-
creative
I don't-
solutions?
within the Brown Act, yeah.
Yes,
like,
okay.
That's what I'm,
I appreciate that so much.
because
You're-
accommodations are on an individual basis. And it
Yes.
goes through a process and I don't in any way want to prejudge that process
Yes, so option 3 is creative solutions.
Yeah.
Okay,
within the Brown Act.
thank you.
Well,
So
and 4 is that we can each,
4 is individual civil rights.
not civil rights, specifically,
I think the
Requesting.
ADA is civil right.
Okay.
Right, am I wrong?
I'm just saying that, to be very specific, that we can ask for individual accommodation.
Yes. Okay.
You're not wrong.
You all had good questions.
And so in the meantime, Todd, you're gonna send us out the list of places that we can use if that's what we choose to do. And the process for applying for an accommodation.
Yes.
Oh, that would be easy for you if you have to be near your work.
Well, I don't know, because I don't.
No, I know where they are.
Location is, but I mean, I think so that we at least have the information, each of us, to do what we need to do going forth.
Yeah.
And until we can make a larger change, say with the Senate bill.
Right, because it doesn't have to be one or the other. We could
Correct.
be using this in combination.
So
And that could start right away.
just for clarity, if let's say you chose a county facility where you felt most,
It was easy for us.
yes, thank you, and same with me and somebody else,
Mhm.
would that be a hybrid in-person Zoom meeting with those of us in other locations essentially on Zoom and then some people potentially here in this room?
Yeah, that would be a little bit awkward because AB 2449, and we have to see how they connect. AB 2449 specifies that a majority of the committee has to be in person.
Well, this is a fascinating conversation.
That's why if you're gonna be calling in, you need to let us know plenty of time ahead of time.
Actually, it
Under
doesn't
the
have to be plenty of time,
No,
it doesn't
under the
say that.
standard rules, because of that very question, we're talking about the emergency or just cause, under 2449 could be them today, and we could be right as the meeting starts, you call in, like, hey, I need to vote on this, that's fine. But we need to make sure a majority is here. If several of you are going to use the standard rules, someone's gonna call in from Ramona, someone's gonna call in from the Live Center, someone's gonna go to the COC, and we don't have a majority here, that means nobody can take advantage of 2449.
No one can take advantage, right? Could you
Of
clarify?
the emergency and
of
just
the
cause
emergency.
exception where you call in at the last second and.
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
Sure, so so that's why if this is why you guys take your time, think about the options. If 3 or 4 of you, for example, were going to take advantage of the standard rules where you have to post the location on the agenda, and you're gonna do that from a county facility or a coffee shop, right? So let's say 4 of you call in from different locations and only 2 of you are here. But there's another person who was sick that day or had a flare up of a condition or something, wants to call in under emergency circumstances. You couldn't do that because you don't have a majority of you here. So those 2 laws, you have the standard rules under the Brown Act, you have the special circumstances under 2449. So it's very important that it's gonna be more of a logistical dance with trying to combine these as we try to help everybody in the groups.
That's why I
So-
said they'll have to get that.
And this is a conversation we're having enterprise-wide, because there's some other groups that are interested in potential options like that, where we call in. And again, there has to be an available location at a county facility, because we do use them for other things, right?
We're also advocating for anyone with a disability that's on any other board, committee, or commission right now.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
What is our next item, Ms. Keely?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I wasn't dismissing him, I was very trying to see if it connected.
Thank you, Randall, have a good weekend.
Thank you.
The next item is virtual access to public meetings. review a draft letter and vote on approval.
Right. So that did not get done yet, so that's gonna be tabled till next month. It became less of an emergency because Chula Vista voted it down. That was the original reason for it, but, and I haven't heard of any other facilities at this time or government bodies that have done, put that forth. Has anyone else? Like I said, we're no longer gonna have virtual call-ins. Are you aware of any others? Is anyone aware of any others? I haven't heard of a change. I'm still advocating with some of them that don't make it easy. But, all right, so if it's okay with everyone, we'll just table that for next month.
The next topic is strategic initiative and public safety.
I don't remember what that was about.
From the minutes last time, you all wanted to continue talking about
Oh.
public safety and actionable items.
Okay, and what time is it right now?
3:39.
I'm gonna suggest that we table that, or if we have extra time at the end, we can take it back up.
I could make a comment now or later regarding our work with the sheriffs.
You can make the comment, certainly, and we will have the sheriff, not the sheriff, I'm sorry, Somerset in our district attorney. No, district, yeah, she's a district attorney. The, coming to speak with us, next month.
No, that's wonderful, thank you.
Do you wanna make a comment now, Jessica?
Yeah, I'd just like to bring to the committee and anyone who is listening, attend. You understand? That there are actually two Senate bills, that I've been paying attention to, Senate Bill 338 and Senate Bill 1108, both related to law enforcement and senior and disability victimization and best practices. The legislation is very clear, and there are some deadlines that have passed in terms of law enforcement being accountable to the best practices policies. And to the best of my knowledge, the sheriff has not updated their policies, so I would like us to address that.
So when you said that deadlines have passed of when they're supposed to release information?
It was supposed to be an up-to-date policy regarding the new policy. Best practice is no longer elder and dependent adult abuse. The policy is now senior and disability victimization, which is a much more appropriate term because dependent adult really leads law enforcement astray when they see somebody living independently or having some functioning. It can give the wrong impression. Dependent adult by law includes a person who lives independently. It's a person who can't advocate for their rights and or carry out normal activities.
And so they have not changed the verbiage, is that what you're
They
saying?
have not updated their policy to be up to the best practice that is determined to be now a law as of SB 338.
Jessica, what are those bill numbers again?
SB 338 and SB 1108.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
The next item, Katie?
Committee officer elections.
Okay, that's right, I wanted to make sure we got through that, and then.
Before we do that, we do need to, we have Candy on, and in order for her to participate, we'll need to do a
No, actually.
24,
My
49.
understanding is unless she wants to use the emergency one, we do not. It's just, she just lets us know that she's calling in. She gets to do two of those.
I'm basically saying that we haven't had that happen yet.
But.
She hasn't identified yet, she's asking if it just pause or.
Candy, are you off the road? Are you safe to talk?
Yes, I'm good to talk.
Welcome, Candy.
Thank you. Apologies, I couldn't be there in person.
So there are two options. This is what Todd was referring to with AB 2449. There are the two freebies, basically, that anybody can call in at any time for two times, just two times. There's a third one, which in this case, this definitely would qualify because your daughter was sick and you had to go to urgent care. As an emergency, unexpected, and if you want to choose to use that right now, we would just vote to authorize you to use that for this time. And then, the other two are just up for grabs in the future if you want to do that. It's up to you which one you choose.
So I could choose to use it now or choose to use it in the future.
Yeah, you can choose an emergency one right now,
Hmm.
because that's the only one that actually needs authorization. The other two, you just inform the body that you're calling it. That's the difference. So if you want to use it now, then you still have two more.
So I still have two more.
Mhm.
Hmm. Okay.
You want us to go ahead and do that and just do an authorization?
Yes.
Okay, so
I move for the authorization for Candy to participate under emergency.
I second.
Okay, and any objections? Go once, any objections, going twice? Then that passes with acclamation.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, I know that it's been a tough day.
Thank you, everyone.
And Candy is official.
Since we're doing elections, I'm pretty sure she'd want to vote.
Thank you, Todd. It was a good catch. I hope your daughter's doing better.
Yes, yes. Thank goodness.
Michelle or Todd, have there been any changes to the composition of our group? Has anyone notified their supervisor and they're no longer with us or anything like that?
Sherry, but we had announced that last time.
Okay,
And,
because we are missing some people.
well,
We're missing Jose.
your reappointment is still pending.
Oh, mine is? I already got my thank you letter from Mr. Desmond. I guess I'll reach out and say thank you for the letter and could you please.
Make sure. At least it was pending last week, so maybe.
Are you saying it hasn't appeared on the agenda for the supervisors meeting? What is it that?
That's a good point for it.
What is it
would
that
need to
makes
be.
it pending?
It hadn't been ratified by the Board of Supervisors.
Nor does it appear to be on Tuesday's agenda. So I guess technically she's still a committee member.
Well, she's a committee member until she's pulled on, right?
Right.
But maybe you're sure it has not been in the last couple of months? 'Cause
Oh,
mine
yes.
was like
Oh,
3
yeah,
months ago.
definitely not in the last couple of months.
Am I the only one that hasn't been reappointed?
Yes, because everyone else either has been reappointed or weren't up. Their supervisor, it wasn't a new
It's
election.
only when the supervisor was re-elected, so it would have only been Jim Desmond and Nathan Fletcher.
Okay, and as far as the redistricting with me being now in Tara Lawson Reamer's district,
Doesn't
that
matter.
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's based on who appointed you. So that, while we're talking about the structure, the at-large position is a 2-year position. But Rakina was appointed October, I believe, so the committee still has some time for the at-large appointment.
Right, it would be at least for another, that's a year and a half.
Can I request that at the next meeting, we do a quick update about the composition of our board?
What is it you're looking for?
Well, there's supposed to be 11 of us.
So there are 3 vacancies.
So the answer is that there are vacancies.
So I guess I would like to readdress the vacancies since that's something that we were prioritizing before and I'm not sure that we've made any headway with that. So it'd be nice just to look at it again and make sure that we're still communicating with our supervisors and getting our board to full capacity.
We can do that.
Thank you.
So do we want to do the election next? Is that our next item?
Yes,
I know, what time is it, like 3:40?
it's 3:45 or 3:48.
I don't know if,
So
since,
based on the nominations in February, there was one nomination for Michelle for chair. And then for vice chair, there were nominations for Carolyn and Jeanette. So do you wanna do the vote on chair?
sure. Am I allowed to run that, or should I have, should Katie? What?
I was just asking if that was correct. For some reason, I thought the nominations were different, but that's
No,
correct.
that was
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
I did a voice vote last time. Do you wanna do the same?
Yeah. So is, do I call it, or should I pass it over to Regina as the vice chair to call it for chair, for the election for chair?
We call the election, but
So I'd like to call for a vote for chair. Our nomination is for Michelle. That's the only nomination on the floor right now. So all in favor of voting Michelle in as chair?
it has to be a voice vote per person, so let me just go down the list.
So a roll call
A roll call, thank
is
you.
what you're saying,
Thank
okay,
you.
that's fine,
Rakina, your vote for chair?
Yes.
she wants you to say your name.
Oh, Michelle.
Kay, your vote for chair?
Michelle.
Michelle, your vote for chair?
Myself,
Jeanette, your vote for chair?
Michelle.
Jessica, your vote for chair?
Michelle.
Carolyn, your vote for chair?
Michelle.
And Candy, your vote for chair?
Michelle.
It's unanimous for Michelle.
thank you,
Congratulations.
thank you.
This
And
is.
on the vice chair, I do wanna thank Rakina for picking that up. I know you have your hands full, and she's gonna be a doctor soon. Yay, right?
Yes.
Yes. So she's definitely focused on that.
Yes, so it has been an honor serving as the vice chair for this committee, and I appreciate everyone's grace with me and patience. And I am happy to support our next vice chair and Michelle with her next term as chair.
Thank you. And we definitely need you staying involved. So we have two candidates, and we wanted to just a vote, or do we wanna have people speak, or?
It's up to you all.
I guess we could,
I don't need to speak.
you don't need to speak. Carolyn, would you like to speak at all, or?
No, I'm good. I've all been here long enough, so whatever works out, whatever the majority wants, I'm good with that.
Okay. Thank you. So how is the best way, so I guess it's still just the roll call and then people say who their vote is for, is that accurate,
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Okay,
So I'll go down the list again. The vote for vice chair, the options are Carolyn and Jeanette. Rakina, who do you vote for?
Jeanette?
Kay, who do you vote for?
Carolyn,
Michelle, who do you vote for?
for Jeanette,
Jeanette, who do you vote for?
Jeanette.
Jessica, who do you vote for?
Jeanette,
Carolyn, who do you vote for?
I'll vote for myself.
Candace, who do you vote for?
Jeanette.
All right. So the vote goes to Jeanette.
thank you for both of running. And we appreciate everyone's feedback, participation. I didn't need feedback, but because it is really valuable. We're all coming from very different places.
Carolyn, I just wanna say that I really hope that you recover quickly and you definitely have my support if there's anything I can do for you. And I really appreciate all of your input in the meetings. You bring a very unique and powerful perspective, and you've been very consistent in coming, and thank you so much.
That's very sweet of you. I appreciate that. Hopefully it'll work out. And with that, I actually have another doctor's appointment here in about 8 minutes. So congratulations to everybody elected. And I'm going to politely hang up and.
Carolyn, before you hang up, we do need to, we have meeting date and time. Are Fridays at 2 p.m. still good for everyone?
Yes.
It is not good for me.
Not good for me either. Carolyn, are there any days that are not good for you? Carolyn, are there any days that would not work for you?
Me, no. Whatever works.
Okay, thanks.
Is there, people have a suggestion? Do we?
I would just like to consider rush hour traffic. I come down here from North County. I have all kinds of barriers and limitations, so getting out at a time that would force me to either stay here for many hours to wait out rush hour traffic or fight through rush hour traffic would be injurious to my health.
Regina, what days work better for you, or what times work better for you?
So your preference would be the
Preferably
morning?
after 3 o'clock, which would impede Jessica because of the rush hour thing, but I think that if we could do any day other than Friday, that would really help me a lot. So even if we wanted to do 2, as long as it could be another day.
And I would be okay with 3 as opposed to 2, because that would at least give me 1 less hour to have to linger.
Okay.
I agree, having to drive back to Ramona at 5 o'clock or 6 p.m. looks completely different. It's probably better that we do a 3 p.m.
So it would mean we would leave at, finish leaving at 5.
And then I would
Isn't that traffic?
drop you off and then head home.
Okay, but I thought 5 o'clock was more traffic, you know? I mean, you guys are driving, I'm not.
My experience is by 4 p.m. you're not moving anywhere, and then as the day progresses, it gets easier, but I can't speak for
Okay.
everybody, we all go in different directions.
But I mean, I think that sounds more amenable to some of the people who are most impacted, distance and just the distance and public transportation and mobility, right? I think then it makes more sense to do it at 3:30.
I think another possibility could be like the 11 to 1 hour where somebody could potentially take an extended lunch and we would be outside of the traffic. So
That could also work.
That would work for you.
It would not work as well.
It would not be as bad. Or
So
is it?
3 o'clock would be better, or is it?
Like the 3 or 3:30
Oh,
would be
not work.
optimal. But I understand everyone else has needs as well.
Candy, what would work better for you?
Oh, well, Fridays are always hard for minimum day because those are days I pick up kids earlier, but I'll also accommodate as well, because I agree in terms of mobility and transportation too. So I could also figure out scheduling and work around everything too. So I'll accommodate.
Would 3 o'clock work?
Yeah,
Schedule?
3 o'clock works for me. 3:30 also works for me. I'll accommodate as well. That's actually better for me in terms of children pickups, you know?
It is better during because I know Friday is, like you said, a minimum. Like
Yeah.
a Monday or a Wednesday, that would work. Do we wanna?
Mondays are very hard. How about, can we talk about maybe Wednesdays or Thursdays?
How does the 4th, what?
Wednesdays is good for me.
Wednesdays.
How
are
about
good for
the
me too.
fourth Wednesday of the month?
That works well for me.
The last Wednesday of each month,
Not the last,
the fourth,
Could be the fifth, I guess I don't care.
the fourth Wednesday of each month.
Yeah, the other would be okay. The reason for me is I have a meeting that someone's gonna be driving anyway.
I'm so sorry. I have to step into oncology, so I
No
have to
problem.
hang up.
Does that work for
Thanks.
you, Wednesday?
Nope, she's gone.
So if I may make a motion, I'd like to make a motion that we change our meetings to 3:30 PM on the fourth Wednesday of each month.
Go to 3:30
I second that, 3:30,
as opposed to 3?
correct.
I know, I was concerned that I might have another option because I have to be up in the Michigan Union Hall at 6.
And we have to keep our meetings to 2 hours, Madam Chair.
No, yeah, but if we start at 3:30, that's too late. So 3 to 5.
Do you wanna
And then I amend my motion for 3 PM on Wednesdays, on the fourth Wednesday of the month.
And I second the amended motion.
Any objections?
No, just wanna throw out there as a last option, we could switch to a Tuesday or a Thursday at 3:30. Does that change anything?
Tuesdays
are not
are
good.
Board of Supervisors, well,
Okay, I can't do Tuesdays.
maybe.
Yeah, Tuesdays are not good.
Okay, so we'll stick with Wednesday.
Oh,
Is this something we can try for
is it that you want?
like
to
a
do
trial
3:30
period and
Wednesday?
see how it goes?
As long as we have enough notice to provide public notice.
So that would make our next meeting on Wednesday, April 26th.
And I will check availability of this. How did getting through security, which by the way, how did the room work out? How is this setup for you?
It was okay. I think,
It worked well for me.
so the security, I know, actually before you came in, Todd talked slightly about the security, he gave out a paper.
This is there was a question around badges. And if the committee could have, did everyone get? I didn't give you one. There was a question around whether the committee members could have ID badges. And I just wanted to share, this is the county identification card program policy, just so that everyone has this. There is there is an ability to get an ID badge. We did find that there are select committees, but I haven't been able to determine the rationale for why these committees got badges and others did not.
Did they ask for it?
I have not been able to determine the rationale.
Didn't you have to do our last practice? Was it you who did them for us? I think you did. I think it was one of your first assignments.
I think so, I was trying to remember all the details.
I still have my badge. We had to fill out an application and give proof of ID, and then you scheduled a meeting where they came in with the camera
Yes.
and took our photos, do you remember?
That sounds very familiar.
And then you handed them back to us. I think it was at the following meeting, like the following month, right, Michelle?
I think so.
Question around badges, does it make it easier around scanners, like having to not go through scanners?
And not, you don't have to like have to go through your bags.
No, just asking that because I can't go through scanners because of my pacemaker. It just makes it easier not to go through scanners if you don't wear if you don't have to wear it.
So as you'll see in the policy that I handed out that, and I've been talking with Department of General Services and Security, you will need to go through a background check and then a life scan. there are activities that, and then to complete the application, et cetera. So I don't think that's an issue necessarily. There are costs that we're investigating how that is handled. In addition to being the ADA Title II coordinator, I am also the Chief Privacy Officer. So I think I said it previously, I am glad to hear that you still have your badge.
Me too.
Because, when you give people badges, I know that we've had people who've resigned or not necessarily, well, whose terms have terminated, and I have yet to receive an ID badge back. So we have concerns around ID badges being out in the public and anyone pick that up and being able to just show it and get into a county facility. So just stressing that, given that there is a determination to move forward with ID badges, I want to make sure that everyone recognizes the need for security around that badge. And if it gets lost, please report that so that we'll know that.
I mean, there is a workaround. You don't have to have badges.
Right, I mean,
You could just leave our names with security and tell them when they see us, let us in.
I would not do that.
Okay, well, they all know Michelle, so if anybody wants to know Michelle, I called her by her first name.
So just wanted to point that out, and then thank you all for the discussion around the date and time. I'll check on facilities, and then we'll check for this facility. And we may be able to have this facility. If there is something in this room already, then we will let you know what our next opportunity is. But we wanted to definitely give you a room with space and then the audio visual capabilities.
We used to meet in the finance boardroom. This is so much nicer.
I remember those meetings.
So if they don't have it, like check if maybe the third Wednesday or the.
We'll find a spot. We did find, because May's meeting on the second Friday,
Right.
it was not available in this room. So we were going to we had reserved a space at the County Operations Center just as for that 1 month to sort of mix it up a little bit, change the view.
That's not why. That would have been very hard, but anyway, so is that the only things we have to do? So we'll do the conversation about security on the next agenda, we'll table that.
I will send out the applications, the forms for badges.
Thank you so much.
You have a few minutes or a minute?
Yeah,
Do we have one?
It's actually 4:06.
No minutes.
what do you need, Jessica?
Oh, I can talk to Todd about it separately. I just know that I had asked Katie to let security know I was coming in with a service dog because that has been some of the most devastating and traumatic experiences in entering county buildings.
And
Well, lovely today. I've never felt so welcome. I could tell they were expecting me. But it's so easy for that to go awry.
And I'll say, I mentioned that to them and they thought you had already come through because someone else just came through, so they seem very familiar with the process.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Do we have one more agenda item? In
Sure.
progress topics?
yeah, but we could let that,
Okay.
It actually, the fact sheet is, I don't know if it's up yet. I haven't checked, but it is in process of being updated. The new fact
Thank
sheet
you.
being up there. Actually, I'll need to update it with the new date and times.
right,
So we'll be updating that and getting it posted.
and you had a last item that you said if there was time, but.
I've been sending out the any announcements that I get via email. I send that out, and I also send the opportunity to subscribe directly. So there are a lot of, actually I do have it, but there are a lot of different topics that you can subscribe to and receive directly, so that one, you're not missing something that would be of interest to you that I wouldn't send over. And then two, you can get it directly and more immediately if there are topics that are of interest. So please, one, take the opportunity to consider subscribing, and you can subscribe via text as for text receipts or for email receipts. And then two, share that with others, your other constituents and other groups, so that they're able to get information from the county directly.
Thank
That's
you.
it, thank you.
That was it.
Thank you. I really appreciate those, and I have been sharing.
Me too, same.
You appreciate what?
And when Todd sends us the information on
Oh,
other things that
yeah.
are going on in the county.
And he calls me, so I know to look in my text, because I never realize twice. So I think that's it for this meeting,
Yep, just meeting adjournment.
and then we have a couple of items held over for next month. Your replacement didn't come.
He's out today.
Replacement.
He went out.
She has a temporary replacement while she learns to be a mother.
Wow, I'm so happy for you.
Yes, we all are, and we really appreciate your due diligence, your detailedness, your responsiveness, your warmth, your welcoming.
I'll just disclose, I called Katie a couple hours before the meeting, and my brain had decided it wasn't gonna cooperate anymore. I've been getting ready for days, and I called Katie and I was convulsively shaking and saying, I don't know if I can make it, and she just coached me all the way here, so I was a little late, but now that I've done it once, I know it'll be easier for me. It's the adapting to new things, and it can kind of squeeze my brain a little too hard, but I can't thank you enough for that, and I have loved meeting in person.
It's good to see you.
Yes.
My first in-person meeting.
Mine too.
We'll have to take him for a tour at the train station.
Oh, yeah. That's one of our favorite ones.
Did we have a call for adjournment?
Call, do I have a
I moved,
motion?
I moved that we.
I didn't know we had to do that, but,
I second, as
okay,
usual.
any
Write it
objections?
into the minutes.
No, everybody have a wonderful weekend. And we will see you in April.